Well, I use the word ambition to describe the work, and I think that Michael Cousteau had a phrase, a quite rude phrase about the British theatre, that it had a tiny mind. Michael Cousteau once said, the British theatre with its tiny mind. And one that was a little belligerent at the time I first read it, maybe typical of Michael Cousteau's polemical approach. There's a certain truth about it. I mean, you don't have to see Kate Winslet fluttering away at the award ceremonies and saying things like, "Gather, gather," when handed this award, or Gwyneth Paltrow doing a rather equivalent thing 10 years ago when she gets her award for Shakespeare in Love, to realise that the theatre's got some serious problems about the way it operates and its estimation among people at large. I mean, the public at large, I think, is deeply sceptical. So one of the first things that I took from this book was a serious ambition. And I think the first thing that the essays in The Theatre in its Double offer us is a sense of scale and ambition beyond anything I might have conceived as being theatrical in the first place. So I think it invites us to think beyond ourselves. And I think that's appropriate in an act of theatre, which can so often, because of the rigours of theatre practice, fall short of ambition, often to do with nerve, a loss of nerve, or perhaps the fundamentals of practicality of getting a piece on and the deadline that approaches. Of course, Artaud is joked about often as being the person who couldn't produce his own work. That slightly sort of cynical approach to Artaud's work. Well, if he'd really taken to heart more of what he said, he might have put into action more of the things he suggested in the work. But that's wholly, I think, to miss the point, because the work is itself the poetry, to be read, to be experienced, to be witnessed, to be talked about. And it brings about, I think, its own sense of event. I think, Peter Brook, Jerzy Krotowski, the Living Theatre, all those people who picked up Artaud responded to that, and their work really comes out from beneath his overcoat, in a way, to take Gogol's phrase. Everyone, in a sense, owes that debt to Artaud, probably for the last 20 to 30 years at least. So what Artaud sort of offers us practically is not, I think, a sort of mechanical book of instruction and so forth, but a provocation to think seriously about performance, and obviously to think performance beyond the auditorium, to think very carefully about any kind of obvious relationship between theatricality and the space of the theatre, but rather to think of performance as being wildly and probably uncontrollably connected with everything that operates within our lives, at the level of spectacle through to the level of intimacy.